Next week, in Emmerdale, Paddy Dingle makes a huge personal sacrifice to protect his father Bear Wolf from spending the rest of his life behind bars by admitting he helped hide the death of Ray Walters. His decision follows Bear's attempt to protect both him and Dylan Penders by falsely confessing that he intentionally killed Ray, even though it means giving up his claim of self-defense. However, when Paddy learns about Bear's confession and realizes his father could face life in prison, he decides to act and reveal the truth himself. According to an insider, Paddy cannot stand the thought of Bear serving a life sentence if there is anything he can do to stop it. He already feels responsible because Bear became involved in Ray and Celia's cruel scheme after feeling unwanted in Paddy's own home. From Paddy's point of view, confessing is the only way he can take responsibility and begin making amends for what happened. It is an extremely risky and courageous choice that could end up costing him everything. Although Paddy intends to go to the police and admit the truth on his own, Dylan refuses to let him take the blame alone. Dylan bravely decides to confess his involvement as well, so the police receive the full story. The choice could change both of their lives forever, and before going to the police station, Paddy discusses it with his wife Mandy. He is deeply moved when she chooses not to try to stop him. An insider explains that family means everything to both Paddy and Mandy. Even though she is devastated by the possibility that they could all end up in prison, Mandy understands that Paddy feels he must do this to protect Bear. It is a painful situation, but Mandy promises to stand beside Paddy no matter what happens. After confessing everything to Detective Walsh and the police team, Paddy and Dylan are formally charged with perverting the course of justice. Just when it appears they are certain to be sent to prison, the Dingles discover a possible way out. If they can prove that Ray intended to kill Dylan, and that Bear acted only to defend him, the outcome could change. There may be one person who holds crucial information that could secure freedom for Paddy, Bear, and Dylan. The question is whether that person will be willing to step forward and help. Drama erupts at Home Farm in Emmerdale this week as Graham Foster begins manipulating the Tate family, interfering with the growing tension between Joe and Kim. Determined to separate the pair and convince Joe that his calculating step-grandmother cannot be trusted, Graham decides to take ruthless measures to prove his point. An insider reveals that while Graham and Kim appear to strongly dislike each other, there may still be hidden emotions beneath the surface, especially on Kim's side. Their already complicated dynamic becomes even messier as both of them compete for Joe's loyalty and attention. This rivalry is set to explode into a full-blown conflict at Home Farm, and it is likely that not everyone will escape the fallout. Although Kim insists she has moved on from Graham, it is obvious their past is unresolved, particularly as she struggles to hide her pain over his pursuit of Rona Goskirk. While confiding in her close friend Lydia Dingle, Kim admits she knows Graham is bad news and promises to keep her emotional walls firmly in place. She refuses to allow herself to be hurt again, believing that someone like Graham does not deserve a powerful woman like her. Meanwhile, Graham secretly enjoys seeing Kim upset. He was irritated when Kim tried to poison Joe's opinion of him because of his secret alliance with Cain, but for the moment he has managed to remain on Joe's good side. According to another source, Joe is growing tired of Graham constantly trying to influence him by criticizing Kim behind her back. Joe even tells the man he sees as a father figure to stop interfering, yet Graham cannot understand why Joe fails to recognize Kim's manipulative nature. After all, Graham still remembers that Kim once attempted to have both of them killed. During the years when Graham was secretly alive while pretending to be dead, Joe and Kim went through several betrayals before eventually forming a strange alliance. Even though Joe often appears confident and arrogant, he still longs for Kim's approval as the leader of the family. However, Graham remains convinced that Kim cannot be trusted and begins looking for a way to expose her. The insider explains that Graham hates losing and will not stop until he succeeds in turning Joe completely against Kim. If there is any opportunity to destroy their bond and bring about Kim's downfall, Graham intends to take it. By the end of the week, Joe seems more open to listening to Graham's guidance on how to deal with Kim. The big question now is whether Graham will succeed in tearing the Tate family apart from within. Paddy's heartbreaking farewell in Emmerdale as the moment of truth arrives. For several months, Paddy has been desperately trying to keep the truth hidden about his role in covering up Ray Walters' death, while attempting to protect his father from being jailed for murder. However, the exhausted vet finally reaches a point where he can no longer carry the burden. Everything began to fall apart when D.S. Walsh secretly noticed a piece of rope inside the veterinary surgery. She quietly photographed it and later confronted Paddy, revealing that it matched the rope used to tie up Ray when his body was discovered. Paddy insisted that the same type of rope is commonly used by many vets, arguing that the connection meant nothing. Unfortunately for him, the coincidence seemed far too suspicious, given that he had a personal reason to want the drug dealer gone. At the same time, Paddy has been struggling to shield Bear Wolf, who has been becoming increasingly unstable. Bear even broke his bail conditions after attacking Jacob Gallagher in the hospital and then disappearing without permission. To prevent Bear from being sent straight to prison while awaiting trial, Paddy arranged for him to stay in a mental health facility instead. D.S. Walsh warned him bluntly that if Bear showed any sign of recovery, he would immediately be removed and taken to jail, which only increased the pressure on Paddy. When Bear is later questioned again, D.S. Walsh tries a different tactic by suggesting that, as a former wrestler, he knew exactly how dangerous his actions were when he strangled Ray. Pushed beyond his limits, Bear suddenly snaps and shouts that he deliberately killed Ray and that he acted alone. Although he sticks to the story, his confession creates an even more serious situation. Actor Dominic Brunt explained that Paddy now believes everything is over and that prison is inevitable for them all. He feels the damage has already been done, believing that even if the truth finally comes out, the months of lies have already destroyed their chances. Now that Bear is potentially facing a life sentence, Paddy feels overwhelmed with guilt. He reflects on the months Bear spent being held captive and the terrible suffering he endured at the hands of Ray and Celia. Thinking about the horrific conditions and the nightmare his father experienced pushes Paddy to act. Determined to put things right, he decides it is time to admit his own involvement in Ray's death. Dylan Penders refuses to leave him to face the consequences alone and promises to stand beside him during the confession. Meanwhile, Mandy Dingle is devastated by the situation, but believes that telling the truth is the only way forward. Emmerdale continues to air on weekday evenings at 8 p.m. on ITV1 and is also available to stream on ITVX.